Helene Pasteur was a wealthy 77-year-old woman who lived in Monaco and, in a way, had built her own empire with her valuable real estate. People around her called the savvy woman the deputy princess because of her business acumen and financial intelligence. She made most of her money by investing in expensive houses in Monaco. Of course, she had also inherited a significant amount. All of this contributed to her unique wealth. But all that money led to some strange events. 2014 was a tough year for Helene. Her eldest child, her 53-year-old daughter Sylvia, had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Her 47-year-old son, Gildo, was hospitalized after a severe stroke. And not long before that, her brother Michel, who was known as the boss of Monaco, had passed away after a long illness. But the strangest events in Helene's life happened on May 6, 2014, which was a beautiful spring day. Helene got into the seat of a big black car called a Lancia Voyager and told her driver, Mohamed Davik, to take her home. She had gone to visit her son at the nice hospital, and it was there that she finally heard some good news. Gildo was supposed to be discharged soon, but after the stroke, he still had a full rehabilitation period ahead of him. Usually, Helene would sit in the back of the car, but that day her shaggy dog, Belle, was sitting back there instead. So Helene took the opportunity to chat with her longtime and trusted driver, Mohamed Davik. Mohamed had worked for her for many years. He was at her service every day from 7 in the morning until 10 at night. He almost never took any time off. He always showed up for work on time. That day, Mohamed gently drove the big car out of the hospital parking lot. As he was leaving the hospital grounds and about to turn right onto the main street, he suddenly had to hit the brakes because a man dressed in black suddenly jumped in front of the passenger door and fired a sawed-off shotgun twice at the side window. The armed man had fired from close range, so the car window shattered. The pellets from the shots hit Helen and her driver in the face, neck, chest, abdomen, and thigh. Everything changed in an instant. Since the incident happened at the hospital, it didn't take long for the doctors to reach the injured. The doctors who arrived were faced with a horrific scene. Helen and her driver's bodies were full of holes and drenched in blood. The armed man and his accomplice escaped the scene on foot. Only her dog, Belle, came out of the attack unharmed. The scene was almost like a mafia-style hit. Brutal, cold-blooded, and precise, with no sympathy or doubt for the victims. Interestingly, Monaco, with an area of just 2 square kilometers, is the second smallest country in the world after the Vatican. But on the other hand, its population density is incredibly high. But that's not the whole story. Out of Monaco's 36,000 residents, 1/3 are millionaires. This city's mild climate and its location by the Mediterranean Sea have made it very attractive. On top of that, this country is known as a tax haven. It's basically a playground for the rich. But the truth is, even all that money couldn't save Helen. Her driver, Mohamed, died 4 days after the attack due to his injuries. Helen, on the other hand, fought for her life for 2 weeks. She even managed to talk to the police a few times and describe the gunman to them in detail, but in the end, she succumbed to death. Helen passed away on May 21, 2014, in the presence of her son and daughter. Her funeral was as grand as that of a queen. Even the ruling prince, the head of the Grimaldi family, Prince Albert I of Monaco, attended the ceremony. The region's elite and other princes also came to bid farewell to Helene Pasteur. Her children were deeply shocked by the brutal murder of their beloved mother. Gildo and Sylvia were now the sole heirs of that woman. Of course, I should mention that they never lacked money in their lives. Both of them had been getting a monthly allowance of €500,000 from their mother for years, and now they were set to inherit at least 2/3 of Helene's vast fortune. At that time, this money amounted to about €12 billion. After all, for 3 generations, the Pasteur family had made a lot of money through construction projects, land ownership, business, and expensive houses in Monaco. At the time of Helene's murder, about 15% of the land in this island country, that is, well over 3,000 apartments and houses, belonged to them. Her son Gildo had owned and managed the French luxury car company Venturi for years. But besides making money, it seems this family had other talents too. For example, in the 90s, Gildo set the speed record on ice and snow in Finland as an amateur driver. This record remained untouched for almost 20 years, meaning it was a pretty high and unique record in its own right. At that time, Gildo was designing race cars with Leonardo DiCaprio, the famous Hollywood actor who played Jack in Titanic, for a new racing competition they had just established. Gildo was born from Helen's second marriage to a dentist named Claude Planca, but his sister Sylvia, unlike Gildo, who was a successful and outgoing person, was shy and always cautious. Sylvia was from Helen's first marriage. Like any murder case, both children and the rest of the Pastor family were among the first suspects. The nice criminal police began their investigation. The press reported extensively on Helen's death. People were truly shocked by this crime. Their anger and disgust were evident in their conversations and the news. But on the other hand, they were relieved that this murder had happened on French soil, not in their luxurious paradise of Monaco, where they'd have to worry about themselves. In Monaco, for every 70 citizens, there's one male or female police officer. The number of surveillance cameras there is higher than anywhere else in the world. In France, the use of surveillance cameras is much less common. But fortunately, both shooters, who had first escaped on foot and then by bus, were caught on those same cameras. In the end, they themselves were really strange and ridiculous. Imagine someone kills a rich person and then escapes by bus. Anyway, it turned out that these men had already been mentioned in police records before. These two young Frenchmen were from Marseille, but they hadn't decided on their own to kill Helene. Someone had hired them as contract killers. At first, the police suspected the French mafia and Helene's business rivals, but as the investigation went on, it became clear that neither the French mafia nor the business rivals were behind this murder. As the investigation continued, the circle of suspects got tighter and tighter every day, to the point where the police suspected that the person who ordered the murder was actually one of Helene's closest family members. Because of this, everyone who had a close relationship with her was questioned more thoroughly and in detail. But in the midst of all this, one of them caught the police's attention. Wojciech Janowski, the longtime partner of Helene's daughter. This 64-year-old Polish man was well known for his charitable work. He had been considered part of the Pastor family for more than 28 years. But he also had a suspicious past. In 1971, Wojciech, who was 21 at the time, came to London as a Polish immigrant without a penny to his name. The following year, he married a casino employee and presented himself as a craftsman artist. After that, Wojciech started gambling in British casinos to make money. He got so good at spotting cheaters that they eventually hired him, and he even rose to a management position. After his divorce, Wojciech married the daughter of a famous French director. This marriage allowed the 33-year-old man to enter high society, to the point that, through their connections, he came to Monaco in the early 1980s and helped organize the annual Backgammon World Championships. A few years later, Wojciech won a big jackpot. After that, he landed a really good job at the world's most famous casino, the Casino de Monte Carlo. This very classy casino has been the location for many movies, from Sean Connery as James Bond in Never Say Never Again, to Julia Roberts and George Clooney in Ocean's 11. Here too, Wojciech was hired again to spot gamblers who were trying to cheat. His job title was visagiste. This French word means both a beauty specialist and someone with a great memory for recognizing faces. While Wojciech was enjoying the casino atmosphere, his future partner, Sylvia, was becoming more withdrawn by the day. She worked a lot and rarely spent her time mingling with Monaco's wealthy society. The way this couple met was that in 1986, when Sylvia attended a charity event, she met the handsome and charming Wojciech there. Within a few weeks, This new love completely turned Sylvia's life upside down. She moved in with Wojciech, and after a while, she got pregnant and gave birth to a daughter. Sylvia didn't want to get married, but she and Wojciech lived together for 23 years and had a joint bank account. Millions of euros were deposited and withdrawn from this account every month. They spent the money lavishly and really enjoyed themselves. They bought a private jet and then apartments in London and Switzerland for their frequent vacations. Sylvia had a unique personality. Alongside this kind of lifestyle, she was also very cautious and kept a low profile. But Wojciech was different. He liked to show off a lot and wanted everyone to notice him. Wojciech even doctored his resume, not just by saying he had some training certificate or had worked somewhere. No, it got to the point where, at one time, a master's degree in economics from Cambridge showed up on his resume, which was a complete lie. He loved being the center of attention and admired by others. In fact, part of his progress in life came from attracting attention like that. Interestingly, in 2010, the president of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, gave him an award for his charitable work. He even became a representative of the Honorary Consulate General of Poland, an honorary but very prestigious position. It's interesting that Wojciech Janowski reminded me of another character from Spain who was very similar to this person. Francisco Nicolas Gomez Iglesias. Anyway, the image he had worked on for years was starting to fall apart because on June 24, 2014, the Marseille prosecutor proudly announced to the press that 5 suspects had been arrested in connection with the murder of Helene Pastor, including the victim's daughter, Sylvia, and her partner, Wojciech Janowski. About 90 people had been interrogated, and in the end, they even caught the 2 fugitive killers. They were 2 poor, small-time criminal immigrants who lived in Marseille. Samin Ahmed, 24 years old, and Ilher Hamadi, 31 years old. They had been identified through surveillance camera footage in Nice and Marseille. Both were born and raised in the Comoros Islands. Comoros is a small, poor republic with close ties to France, which used to be its colonial ruler. These 2, in short, immigrated to France when they were teenagers. Since then, they had been getting by with whatever work they could find. Eventually, they took a train from Marseille to Nice for this murder. They had checked into separate hotels under fake names and arranged to meet in front of the Arcade Hospital shortly before the murder. One of them was standing at the entrance, while the other was lying in wait behind the parking lot door with a loaded gun. Neither of them was wearing a mask. This was yet another one of their strange moves, just like their escape by bus. That's why they were identified through security cameras and Helen's statements. The police interrogated the 2 with their most skilled officers, and in the end, Wojciech was identified as the one who had ordered the murder. It turned out that Wojciech's personal fitness trainer had connected him to these 2 criminals. At the meeting where they all gathered to plan, Wojciech, in broken and very rude French, spoke badly about Helen behind her back and gave the order to kill her. As soon as the police arrested Wojciech's trainer, he confessed. He told them that for this murder, up to 40,000 euros had changed hands. In addition, Wojciech had also ordered the murder of his brother-in-law, Gildo, who at the time was actually hospitalized in Nice. They were supposed to shoot him with a gun from the hospital window, but that murder never happened. The evidence and documents in Helen's case were very clear. The murder money was found with one of the 2 killers. In addition, the investigation team had wiretapped the phone conversations of these 2 suspicious killers at a company where Wojciech was the chairman of the board. The French police immediately released Sylvia and announced that she was no longer a suspect. But for Wojciech, things were different. For days after his arrest, he confessed. The honorary diplomatic title couldn't save Wojciech or prove his innocence, and with so much evidence, denying the crime was basically pointless. At first, he claimed that he just wanted to save Sylvia from her cruel mother, but in the next court session, he denied all the charges and said that because his French wasn't good, he used the wrong words, and that's what created the misunderstanding that made him look like he wanted to kill his mother-in-law. He strongly denied having any motive for murder, since he and Sylvia had never gotten married. So in the end, the inheritance that was supposed to go to Sylvia wouldn't have gone directly to him anyway. So he had nothing to gain from the death of his partner's mother. It took almost 3 years for the case of these two murders to finally go to court. In the end, 10 people were charged in this case. The trial began on September 17, 2018, in the Provence region in southeastern France. Besides the two main suspects, Shota and Wojciech Janowski, the fitness coach, his brother-in-law, and several other accomplices, including Wojciech's cousin, were also charged. Sylvia was summoned as a witness. When her defense attorney asked her if she thought Wojciech was innocent, she replied, "Do you know what you're asking me? This whole thing is so bizarre that I don't know what to believe. My entire world has fallen apart. 28 years of my relationship now feel meaningless to me. I've lost my mother. I've lost the man of my life. What am I supposed to tell my daughter?" Throughout their entire relationship, Sylvia believed that Wojciech was earning his own money. He was always bragging about his startup called Freemos, but it turned out it was all just a bluff. Wojciech's main source of income was always Sylvia's allowance. It's strange that despite his mother-in-law's generosity, he hated her. He even lost money in a few investments, like a business in the oil industry. But after a few months, their joint bank account was deep in debt. On top of that, Wojciech had racked up over €1 million in debt in his personal account. But he played his role so well that no one suspected him. He claimed he had no motive for murder, but the truth was he could indirectly make good use of Helen's assets. In short, after Wojciech denied everything for a while, he finally did a complete 180 in court. With tears in his eyes and in a very dramatic fashion, he confessed to killing his mother-in-law in front of the jury. He said he did it for Sylvia's mental health, because her mother tormented her every day. He said, "From the very first day we were together, I had to protect her. Her mother and brother were like snakes. They wanted to kill her little by little." But he made this confession only after the prosecutor showed the jury his previous confession to the French police. Up until then, Wojciech had claimed that the police had practically tortured him at the time to force a confession out of him. Things had gotten to the point where the more Wojciech struggled and tried to come up with reasons and evidence for himself, the deeper he sank into the mess he had created. In the end, he confessed fully, but he still refused to take responsibility for the death of the poor driver, Mohammed David, because he said he had never ordered his murder or paid any money for it. Before the verdict was announced, he apologized to Sylvia for the murder of her mother. After a 4-week trial that ended in October 2018, the jury found him guilty of both murders. In his closing statement, the prosecutor said how strange and disgusting it was that Wojciech had used his mother-in-law's own money to pay for her murder. Both Wojciech Janowski and the two hired killers were sentenced to life in prison. Wojciech appealed the sentence. His lawyer tried to get temporary release for his 71-year-old client until the appeal trial because he was in poor health. But so far, the French court has denied this request. Sylvia has never publicly commented on the sentence of her partner and the father of her daughter, and, as usual in her life, has acted very conservatively. But her brother Gildo acted differently. He testified in court that their mother was afraid of Wojciech. Other witnesses also confirmed this. When the verdict was announced, Gildo said, "I was always sure it was Janowski. I'm truly glad that the jury did not fall for his rather tearful confession at the very last moment of the trial." We'd really appreciate it if you support us by liking, subscribing, or even leaving a comment, especially in the first few hours after this video is released. This helps the YouTube algorithm recommend our channel to people who don't know us yet. That's the biggest favor you can do for us. Thank you so much.